There is a specific kind of silence that lives in ancient stone and open water. That is what I wanted to experience.
Hello, all, and welcome back to Jolly Good Journeys. Today, I'm in Castiglione del Lago. It is a beautiful lakeside town in the Umbria region of Italy. Join me in exploring this wonderful town.
After leaving my home base in Orvieto for the day, I looked for a location that felt deeply anchored to the earth. As I passed through the ancient gates of Castiglione del Lago, I immediately felt a heavy shift in time. The stonework there wasn't just old, it felt defiant. It possessed a rugged, weathered texture that showed exactly how many centuries of wind and weather had come rolling off the lake. I spent time wandering those narrow, shaded corridors. There was an unmistakable industrial grit to the architecture, a rawness in the brick and mortar that made no attempt to be polished or refined. Every corner I turned offered a new study in shadows and light, playing off walls that had stood their ground for generations. I didn't find overwhelming noise there. Instead, it was just the steady echo of my own footsteps and the occasional bird breaking the quiet. It was the perfect environment to simply get lost in the geometry of medieval urban planning. I felt that the best way to understand an Umbrian town was to read the history written on its walls, letting the layout of the alleys dictate my pace. Eventually, the tight grip of those alleys released me into the Piazza Antonio Gramsci. It acted as the architectural lungs of the town, finally giving the surrounding structures room to breathe. The buildings there carried a quiet dignity. Their facades, worn by the elements, offered a masterclass in faded, earthy tones. I was drawn to the way the sunlight hit those open squares, casting sharp, dramatic lines across the uneven cobblestones and framing the sky above. There was a stillness there that let me really appreciate the scale and the craftsmanship of a bygone era. It was just me, the stones, and the slow creep of the afternoon shadows. As I walked across the piazza, there was a subtle shift in the air. I could actually feel the humidity rising, a physical hint that the geography was about to change abruptly. And then, right at the edge of the square, the town simply dropped away. The horizon split open, and I was wet with the vast, shimmering expanse of Lake Trasimeno. It was a striking, sudden contrast. From there, I stepped inside the Palazzo della Cogna, and the atmosphere completely transformed. The ambient noise of the outside world faded to absolute zero, leaving only the visual weight of the history surrounding me. The walls and ceilings were heavily covered in intricate frescoes that chronicled the exploits of the mercenary family who once ruled this promontory. Even there, indoors, there was a fascinating texture to the decay. The peeling paint, the oxidized colors, and the faded pigments added a heavy layer of melancholy to the grand scenes depicted above. It was a stark reminder that no matter how much power was once concentrated in those halls, time always had the final word. Moving through those silent, cavernous rooms, I could almost feel the heavy echoes of the 16th century. The architecture was imposing, designed to intimidate and impress in equal measure. Every archway and vaulted ceiling felt like a testament to a very specific, ruthless ambition. But stripped of its former inhabitants, it just stood as a quiet gallery of ghosts. The sheer scale of the empty rooms made me feel incredibly small, an observer passing through a frozen moment in time. Leaving the palazzo, I entered one of the most fascinating architectural features of the entire town, the covered passageway connecting the palace directly to the Rocca del Leone fortress. It was a long, enclosed corridor, originally built so the ruling family could move between their residence and their military stronghold in total secrecy. The acoustics in there were incredible. Every single footstep echoed heavily, serving as a rhythmic reminder of the path's original tactical purpose. The brickwork was raw and highly functional, a sharp, immediate departure from the painted ceilings I had just left behind. It was pure utilitarian grit. I was essentially walking right through the defensive spine of the old town. Looking through the narrow angled slits in the walls, designed strictly for defense, I caught these fragmented, framed glimpses of the outside world. The sheer length of that tunnel constantly built a sense of anticipation for what lay at the end. And then I finally emerged into the Rocca del Leone. This was defensive medieval architecture at its absolute most uncompromising. Built in the shape of an irregular pentagon, it was designed to be invincible. The walls were massive and deeply scarred by time, but they still radiated an undeniable strength. Walking the high perimeter, the views were unparalleled. I was entirely suspended between the sky and the water, looking out over the olive groves below. The tactical advantage of that promontory was obvious, but that day it just offered a profound sense of isolation. From the fortress, I walked down to Lake Trasimeno. It was a massive, shallow basin that dictated the weather, the light, and the entire mood of the region. The water looked like a vast sheet of hammered metal. It was serene, silent, and endless, a perfect natural counterpoint to the dense, heavy stone of the fortress I had just explored. Looking back over the terracotta roofs and quiet streets of Castiglione del Lago, I appreciated how the town had anchored itself to that specific landscape. It was a place defined entirely by its contrasts. Thank you once again for joining me on this journey. I'll see you next Saturday with a new one. Keep exploring.